Maro Itoje is the new England captain. He's been thought of as the FEC for quite some time, and you have to say his promotion is fully deserved. But what does that mean for Jamie George? Hello, amateurs, and welcome to our Six Nations series. Here with you throughout the Championship and beyond. So hit subscribe down below to ensure you don't miss out on any future episodes. But in this episode, we're going to be looking at England's 36-man squad announced today by Steve Borthwick for the 2025 Six Nations. Who are the winners? Who are the losers? Let's get into it. So as I said, it's a 36-man squad and only two uncapped players. Borthwick really getting into sort of more experienced players now. You feel like he's tested all the people that he wants to. These two uncapped players might not have got in there without some injuries in the wider squad as well. But the biggest news, which I started the episode with, Maro Itoje has been promoted up to captain. I mean, as I said, he's been thought of as a future England captain for a long, long time. And Jamie George demoted back down to vice captain. And I think this decision has come around because Jamie George is not guaranteed his starting place anymore, and certainly not going to play the majority of games. He's been a wonderful player for England and still is, but his form is not what it was. He's not quite the player he once was. And I'm a huge fan of Jamie George, but you rarely see him now running with the ball. And he often, well, not often, but he sometimes makes defensive errors as well, missing tackles, which I never remember him doing from years gone past. So his star's fading slightly, and along with people like Luke Cowan-Dickie, who is playing fantastically well, and Theo Dan, has gone through a bad spell actually, but he's coming back to playing some good rugby again, and along with other hookers as well. I think that's really what it is. I don't think it's necessarily Itoje sort of overtaking him. I think it's George needing to take a step down. But like I said, I'm a huge fan of Jamie, and his time as England captain, for me, I'll always be very fond of, because although the results didn't always go England's way, I became really excited to watch England play again. Like, they've been ambitious on attack and defence, and that's what I really like to see in my rugby teams. I like to see ambition. I like to see him pushing the envelope, and this England team, Jamie George's England team, has certainly done that, and they put the smile back on my face when it comes to watching England play rugby. So Maro, good place to take over from. Let's see where you get up to. Okay, let's get into the forwards, and the loosehead ranks. We have Ellis Gaines, vice captain, playing very well this year. Finn Baxter, who's had a little bit of a dip of form actually, and I'm not sure whether this is due to Joe Marler's retirement. There's something about having like pressure on your place and knowing, and maybe actually it's relaxing for him, knowing that if he had a bad game, Joe could come on and shore things up. And the looseheads below those two at Quint aren't anywhere near as good. So, you know, these pressures, these mental things can really affect, especially young players, I guess. He had a better game this week, Baxter, but he's had a bit of a dip in form. So we'll see there. And Bevan Rodd, the other loosehead, who had a fantastic outing this past week against Franz Malherbe of the Stormers. He launched him. He got him in the air. So, and that, I don't think I've ever seen that happen before to Malherbe. So Bevan Rodd still needs some consistency. His work around the pitch is fantastic. But that outing against Malherbe stands him in very good stead. The hookers, as I mentioned earlier, Cowan-Dickie, Jamie George and Theo Dan. No real surprises there, although people like Gabriel Ogre and Curtis Langdon have been playing really well in the Premiership. To the tight heads, Will Stewart, Asher Apoko Fajor, and here's the one, Joe Hayes, in for his clubmate Dan Cole. Have we seen the end of Dan Cole now? Fantastic. Amazing servant for England rugby. It feels like this is probably it for him now, that it'll be a big ask for him to get back in, aside from a slew of injuries or something like that. Maybe that's the end for Dan. Fantastic innings, mate. Also, not in the tighted ranks, overlooked Trevor Davison, who's been playing pretty well. He was there during the autumn, and Fosogbon at Gloucester got name checked as well. So he's one for the future, really, but injured at the moment, so not considered. I think Will Stewart's been on fantastic form. His autumn series was as good as I've ever seen him play. His scrummaging in particular is really, really kicked on, I think. So I'd be looking for him to have a good Six Nations. And I think his sort of somewhat lack of game time at Bath, he rarely starts. means that I think he's quite fresh when he comes to England as well. He doesn't play that many minutes, so he can really get into it. I think that maybe really helps him. We shall see. Second row ranks, very familiar here. Chesham, Itoje, George Martin and Alex Coles. A few lacking game time here a little bit. Chesham hasn't played a lot through injury. George Martin actually hasn't been playing that well, but we all know what a big game player he is. So we shall see with that. Possibly Chesham might play 6 if they're all fit and available. We'll see. Into the back row, and we have Curry, Earl, Dombrant, Cunningham South, Ted Hill, who a lot of people have been absolutely raging for, he's been in fantastic form for Bath. Obviously, really pacey, really big, really strong, just immense work rate as well. Will that translate into the international game? That's the big question. And the other one who's been tearing up trees this season, Tom Willis from Saracens. He has been absolutely insanely good. And not only that, just the step up from where he was at the end of last season to step into Billy Vunipola's shoes and just take it on and on and on and on. He's been playing consistently so well. So there's great combinations there across that England back row. Sam Underhill not considered because of injury. But I think they're well stacked there. And depending on what type of game they want to play, they've got big carriers. They've definitely got line-out presence. They've got a lot of breakdown presence there as well. So covered, all good for me. Also not selected, where there's been a lot of clamour amongst supporters. Henry Pollock from Northampton. He is clearly an outstanding young talent, but this is way too early for him, especially when England are so stacked in back row players. They've got a lot of players that play in a very similar style to him. I mean, Ben Earl's very similar. So he's a great young player, and his time will come, I've no doubt. But for me, it's still way too early. Into the backs. And the big loser at scrum half is Ben Spencer, who started the autumn series and now is not even in the 36-man squad. He's gone with Alex Mitchell, who's been great since returning from injury for Saints, Harry Randall and Jack van Poortvliet. I mean, this is good for me in terms of how England might be looking to play, because they all run. They can all run the ball really, really well. Van Poortvliet obviously is probably the premier kicker out of the three, but I think this is good signs for how England are going to attack this Six Nations. Fly half stocks, very familiar now. Smith and Ford. And I think it's going to be Marcus to run the show here. I think he's going to be given the keys, and I think he's going to be trusted with it. He's been playing fantastically well for Harlequins. He is growing, I think, almost game by game. His competitiveness, allied obviously with his remarkable skill set, I think he's the man to take England forward. I like George Ford in the squad. I think he can really help in terms of just being a sort of presence, almost like another coach in the playing stocks. So I've always been a big fan of Ford, and I think he may get a bench spot, but I think he might well go with Finn Smith, though, who's also been playing very well. The centres, and we've got the familiar presence of Lawrence and Slade. Dingwall also back in the squad, along with uncapped Oscar Beard. This gives England... I don't know, I feel like this is probably England's weakest area. At their best, those guys can play well, but we don't really have that huge ball carrying presence at 12 or a ball playing 12 that can really sort of hold up all the other sides of the game as well, the physical presence. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here. I suspect he'll start with Lawrence and Slade again. But we shall see. Oscar Beard's been playing very well for Harlequins. He looks like a very good talent. Also a good young talent, not selected, is Ajomo from Bath. He's come on now, I think. A couple of years ago or a year ago, like, he had these remarkable skills and he did things that you never see other players do, but I didn't think his nuts and bolts were quite there. But I watched him this past weekend and he is a carrying threat at the line. His handling skills are obviously there and he tackles as well. So again, I think there's another one that might come through in the next 12 months. Not considered, not in the squad versus the autumn internationals, Lazowski from Saracens. I'm a big fan of his, but I just think he has too many errors on defence to really make it as an international player. He's so physical, and I think sometimes he emphasises that physicality over just completing tackles. So I feel for him. He's a fantastic player, and I don't think he's ever got a real fair crack of the whip. Same with Ben Spencer, who I'm also a big fan of. But it is what it is. It's a very competitive area. The wings, and we got Freeman and Slightholme, Roebuck, and the other uncut player, Caden Murley from Harlequins. And I think we'll see. I think the right wing spot is between Freeman and Roebuck. I like Tommy Freeman on the right wing. I think he finds chasing kicks easier that way, just jumping with his right arm first. So I always prefer to see him on the right wing. And then I think the left wing spot will go to Slightholme or Murley. And if I had to pick, I think he'll probably go with the guys that have done it for him already, so Freeman and Slightholme. But if it was Roebuck and Murley, I'd also be very happy. They've both been playing really well. Obviously, Emmanuel Feo-Weboso out injured as well, missing, which gives opportunities to others, because otherwise I'm sure he would have been in and playing. Fullback and George Furbank out injured with a broken arm. So Freddie Stewart, who's been playing very well and got picked ahead of him anyway in the Autumn Internationals at times, and Elliot Daly back into the squad. Now, Furbank, I think in terms of the attacking play, is by far and away England's best player, but the drop down now to Freddie Stewart is nowhere near compared to the drop down that it would have been compared to like the 2022 or 2023 Freddie Stewart. His running game has come on leaps and bounds, and this last weekend against Ulster, his catch and pass, putting other people into space, the timing of that, the accuracy of it has gone up so many levels in sort of recent months that he's now that link player that can bring other people into play as well. I think he assisted 3 tries at the weekend, all with fantastic bits of play. So overall, I think I'm really happy with this squad. I think there's been some tough calls in there for sure. No doubt changing the captain being the biggest one. And a few people that are very unlucky, but that's always going to be the case with international squads. I think I'm happy that England look like, with their choice of scrum halves, they look like they're going to continue to play a fast-paced attacking game. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting time. There's chatter about that England might be transitioning to a slightly less aggressive defence. That's something we did a podcast on a few weeks back, actually. So go back and check that one out. Actually, I'll link it up here about England's defence. And it seems like they might be going to this compound system where they sort of go up hard but then drift if they've not got the numbers. We'll see. That's what the chat is saying. Okay, so that's what I think. But what do you think? Were there some players that didn't get picked that you think definitely should have been? Which players that did get picked do you think maybe shouldn't have been? Let me know in the comments down below. And we'll have a good old friendly conversation down there about it. While you're down there, give this video a thumbs up if you don't mind. It helps other people find it. And do not forget to get out and play.